2021, which includes the parishes of Iberia, Lafourche, Mary, and Barrow. Senator Allain is serving his third and final term in the Louisiana State Senate. As senator, he serves as chairman of the Tax Reviewing State, Revenue, and Fiscal Affairs Committee, and he also has been appointed to serve on the Senate and Government Affairs, Natural Resources, and Agriculture Committees, as well as Joint Budget, Legislative Committee on Capital Outlay, and State Bond Commission. Goodness, what are we going to do without you when your term expires? We'll talk about that.
I'm going to rest. I'm going to rest.
Well, Senator, thank you so much for coming in.
Sure.
I know that you have been just, hitting the streets and making the gambit going around talking about these tax proposals. You've been working very hard. Also with Senator Representative Stuart Bishop.
Who's my counterpart in the House on Ways and Means.
Exactly. And so the two of you have become very friendly and creative because nobody really likes tax issues. They're a bit convoluted, to say the least. So we appreciate you working hard on this. And I know that there's 5, 6, 7 tax issues that you have decided to tackle, and I'll let you decide which one you want to talk about first.
Well, the review, we needed a review and a restructuring of the taxes in the state of Louisiana. So we went and we sat down and actually physically met with the Tax Foundation, this Council on State Taxation, Multi-State Tax Commission, and the tax administrators. And I asked them all the same thing. Why are we rated so poorly? And amazingly, they readily admit that when they look strictly at tax burden and the amount of taxes that we charge businesses and people, we're kind of middle of the pack. But because of all the deductions and exemptions and everything else that we give in the antiquated system that we have, last year we were rated 42nd. This is Tax Foundation, year before 44th. So they give us no credit for giving some of the money back or giving credits like the federal income tax deduction credit. They just score us poorly for the rate that we have to charge to compensate for that. So last year, it was not a fiscal session. There was a lot of these we couldn't do. So we tackled what I consider low-hanging fruit. And in that, we passed a lot of the things that the Council on State Taxation wanted to see, and we improved that score dramatically. This year, we're going to tackle what I consider big items. First of all, let me talk. It's not my bill, but first of all, centralized sales tax is the Speaker's bill. I also have a member on my side, Barry Milligan, Senator Milligan. That's also going to run it from our side. Centralized sales tax is probably an idea that's well overdue. It's been fought by the local tax administrators, obviously, in the turf, but it's real simple. 2 years ago, in that sales, the state collected $7 million. At the same time, Mississippi did its centralized sales tax, up to collecting $400 million a year for internet sales, and they only have 3 million people. We have 4. So the idea, and I keep telling the local tax administrators, the amount of money that we're missing out on is huge. Why would you have a conservative Republican pushing for tax on internet sales? Because I think it puts the mom and pops and the people with brick and mortar in our parishes at a supreme disadvantage. And unlike the businesses that are here that contribute to the community and have jobs here, internet sales, Jeff Bezos doesn't know where Terrebonne or Houma, Louisiana is. So we have to have some equity. So I'll say that this is not my bill. It's not one of the things I'm really looking at, but I'm hugely supportive of where they're going with this. Besides, if you have a business that does business in several parishes in the state of Louisiana, it's going to simplify. The central is greatly going to simplify your structure and the amount of people you have to dedicate to take care of sales tax in the state of Louisiana. For those reasons, I'm hugely supportive.
That's right. And I've seen, little billboards around town that says Amazon doesn't sponsor your son's baseball team. So
Correct.
I could understand that. And I know you have Wendy Thibodeau, tax assessor for Lafourche Parish. And Wendy, just give us a minute. Let's go through all of these things. I know that you're going to want to comment on that. Let's go through all of these, and then we'll get to some comments. Speaking of, if you have any comment questions, please use the chat feature. That's on the top right of your screen, and we'll get through those questions for you. All right, so that's centralization for the sales tax, and that's specifically for internet sales tax, or is that across the board?
It's going to be across the board.
Okay.
It's they've spent a year on a task force working out the details. I think we're down to the structure of what the committee is going to look like. There's obviously some late pushback on some of this, but I don't think that this is going to be. I think this will pass, and it'll be on the ballot either this year or next for voters to want centralized sales tax.
Got it.
Well, let me move on. One of the big items that we have is personal income tax. Mm-hmm. We charge at a 6% rate, which is a lot higher than a lot of other states. In fact, Texas has no personal income tax. Florida has no personal income tax. And we have seen that's a huge attraction to a lot of people. We know from the census data that we get to do redistricting, that people are leaving California and New York, a lot of northeastern states in droves, but they're not coming to Louisiana. They're just in Texas and they're going to Florida. Now, if you own a house in Texas, you would know how high the property taxes are in Texas and business property taxes in Texas. I kind of like the system that we have where half of it, because you're going to pay that every year regardless if you're profitable or not. At least half of the tax structure we have in the state of Louisiana depends on, as far as business-wise, depends on whether you make a profit or not. And I kind of like the idea of them both being broke up. I own a sugar mill. I have to pay the same amount of property tax whether I make a good crop or not. So at least half of my tax burden is on whether or not I have a good crop or not, or whether I have a profitable year or not. So I kind of like that part of the tax structure. And you'll never catch me saying I want to be exactly like Texas. We're from Louisiana.
That's right.
So here's the deal. We're gonna propose eliminating the FIT deduction, federal income tax deduction. We've been on a roller coaster. We're one of only 2 states left that have that deduction. Most of the states got away from that 20 years ago. When you saw the huge swings up and down of what the federal taxes are. When Reagan first put in his tax cuts, people got away from that many years ago. We actually have it embedded in our Constitution, so this will take a constitutional amendment also.
Right.
But what we're going to do is we're going to make it revenue neutral. Whatever a taxpayer was getting for the deduction, we're going to buy down the rate. So we're going to get the top rate down from 6 to somewhere around 4. Maybe a little bit more, but we're going to make it revenue neutral. Nobody's going to be worse off. We're just going to get rid of the deduction. That will improve our ratings drastically. Tax Foundation scored us poorly for having a high personal income tax rate. They gave us no credit for the FIT deduction. So just that will improve us. And why you ask, and I'm sure a lot of people are wondering why so much about the rates. People and businesses look at the tax foundation for guidance when they're looking to relocate or to make investments in the state. The worse you look in the tax foundation rating, the less chance you got of getting investments in this state. You have to be competitive with the neighboring states. Getting our ratings up with the tax foundation, Council on State Taxation, a lot of these other organizations, I believe means we're going to get a better shot at getting investment here in the state. And the Tax Foundation always says simplicity and predictability are the two top things that they rate on. And I think that's the key to a good tax structure. But move on to corporate income tax. Corporate income tax, we're going to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. We're going to get rid of the federal income tax deduction, and we're going to buy down the rate proportional. This will not be a tax or a tax decrease. This will be as revenue neutral as we can get it for all the taxpayers, and we should be able to buy down the corporate tax rate a good bit and hopefully eliminate a couple of the brackets that are there. Right now, top 8% is top rate, and there's 5 brackets. We hope to get that down closer to 6 and eliminate a couple of the brackets, which I think would be a vast improvement.
And I think key to all of these proposals is revenue neutral.
Yes.
Because you can't just go in and start making changes and then not know how it's going to affect the future of the state budget or of these businesses. So you have to make sure that it's just going to keep things on an even keel.
That is the goal right now. If there's opportunities at a later date to do something else and give back people some of their hard-earned money, we will certainly do that. But right now, just to align our tax structure so we're rated the same as all the rest of the states would be a huge improvement over what we have.
So that it's fair and that it makes sense.
Correct. And predictable.
Right.
A business makes plan way into the future. And predictability is a big part of what we're trying to do.
Yes. And this region is looking for some stability.
Yes, they are.
That's true.
The entire region. Remember, yes. I not only have Houma I also have Morgan City, which is suffering the same as Houma.
Just as much, exactly. All right. York Road, where are we next?
Franchise tax.
Okay.
I can't think of a worse disincentive to bring in capital to the state of Louisiana than to tax the capital once it's here. This one's probably going to be the most difficult one.
Really?
Because, yes. Because we don't have a good fix. Eliminating some of these deductions, like the FIT deduction and some of the other deductions we'll talk about in a minute, would get us a long way. But we have to find a replacement. If I just did away with franchise tomorrow, it would create a $400 million hole in the state's budget. So limit utilization of tax credits, doing some other things, I think are all things that we're looking at. This one we're gonna file this year, but probably going to have to take a couple of years worth of work to work out a meaningful reduction or elimination. But we are working on it.
I'm sure there are people who can enlighten me and explain why it's needed or reason behind it. But just as an outsider looking in, it's basically a tax to do business in Louisiana.
It is.
Outside of the state and federal taxes, and in Louisiana, here's another tax.
Franchise, most of the businesses over the years have moved from being a C corporation or corporate taxpayer to either sub S or an LLC. Those will flow through, those will be taken care of in the lower rate of the personal income tax, because that flows through to your personal and you pay tax on it there. So I think that we will solve a lot by doing the personal income tax, but the franchise for your businesses is a big deal. One of the things that I will do this year, and we fought on last year, we gave a 2-year suspension of the first level of franchise tax, which is you won't get taxed on the first $300,000 worth of capital that you have. Actually, that all 80% of the filers that fell under that category. The rest are the larger payers that go up. I'm going to try to make that permanent, and then there's a separate bill to try to eliminate franchise altogether for everybody. But it's
so. Was there a stepping stone you were looking at for maybe the first 500,000?
So I may try to go to the first 500. We have this law that just passed, the American Rescue Plan, the $1.9 trillion Biden or Democratic proposal that passed. There's embedded in that saying that if you use that money to buy down taxes in the state, they'll give you a penalty. We're trying to avoid that. So we're going to have to move a little slower on franchise to make sure we don't lose any of the American Rescue dollars that are coming to the state.
Right, because that's important.
Yep, it is. Let's see.
And only 12 levy a franchise tax is what
correct. But listen, Texas has a margin tax, which is like a franchise tax, except they do it on gross receipts. Actually, we talked to the Tax Foundation. We thought about swapping it for some type of margin tax like Texas has. There are a lot of other states, I think New Hampshire, Ohio, Kentucky, all went to that instead. But when talking to the Tax Foundation, they'd score us for receipt tax, and they're scoring us for having a franchise tax. So that's not an option for us. No. We don't want to damage our score any by going that route.
Right.
But in the state of Louisiana, we have a lot of credits. And somehow we're probably going to have to look at limiting the utilization of those credits to make sure everybody pays something on the corporate income tax. That way we could probably lessen or eliminate the franchise. So those are all things that we're working on now. But it's very complex, a lot of moving parts. Mm-hmm. You move something here, you got to see how it affects everything else. So
just a spider web.
It is. It really is. Last, we'd love to do something with severance tax. There was actually a proposal that passed both houses last year to phase down or limit franchise being charged. And in talking to industry, I agree. 12.5% severance tax is the highest in the nation. And we have that on vertical oil. Mm-hmm. But several years ago, we exempt horizontal gas altogether. So there's the inequity.
Right.
We made a proposal. We actually studied it and sent it to the LSU Energy Studies. And they came back with a proposal how to equalize the two without there creating a huge hit to the fist of the state. We can't afford to lose $300 million that severance brings us now. But by equalizing it, we get it way down close to where Texas is, if not equal to what Texas has. Now remember, Texas is a little different because they also charge property tax on the size and the value of the reservoir that Louisiana does not do. So it's not an apples for apple with Texas either. But we could darn sure bring that some revenue off of the horizontal gas. Horizontal gas is only being done in water this state. Vertical in this state, virtually non-existent severance that's theirs. If we could equalize them, I think you'd see some activity back down here and up in North Louisiana, the historic oil plays. But we can't do it. And look, the guys who are producing horizontal gas are fighting it. They don't want to.
And from what I read, they were exempt initially because there's a new industry, new technology. Let's welcome them in and and now they represent what?
80%. 80 to 90% of all the gas that's produced in the state of Louisiana has no severance paid on it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So what was a good idea originally now probably needs to be revisited, but we're working. We sent it back to industry. We sent it back to Loga and Lamoga and said, you come with a proposal. We don't want to fight you.
Right, because this is not a time to fight industry.
No, this is not a time to fight industry. So we send it back to them and say, you come with a proposal. We'll be happy to move it through the process if you can come to an agreement on what this should look like.
So that's two of the state oil and gas agencies
Correct.
or associations to ask them to come up with something that might be equitable.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So far, we haven't gotten anything back, but there's a placeholder bill that I'm going to have in case they come up with an idea that we'll be able to use.
Good. All right.
And I think that pretty well covers it.
All right. What about inventory tax?
Yes. Okay. That was the other thing. I have met with the Assessors Association. I have met with LMA, Municipal Association, and I have met with Police Jury Association on a possible swap or transfer to phase legislature stepped in and says, we just give the money back. And at the time, it was very small on charging tax on inventory. I think it cost the state 1991 $41 to get us back the money. That grew in 17 or 18, and that grew to $450 million, and it became very burdensome for the state. A lot of people were claiming inventory that wasn't really inventory. They were running up the inventory bills. Things got out of hand. You can get 75%. You get another tax credit. You can't get the inventory tax credit also, so you don't get your money back. I didn't agree with that one. That was one put forth by Sir Rick Ward.
Okay.
Back in that day. But we are where we are. So that shrunk to about $300 million where we are right now. Still a sizable sum. So I have talked to the locals, and I am on the 18th. I'm also going to meet with the School Board Association about possible exchanges, changing the Constitution as far as ITEP provisions. In exchange for reducing, eliminating, or phasing up tax. Also, there would be a backfill. We would take $250 million of the cost of the locals where they are right now, but still eliminate the inventory tax, constitutionally protected. And that way, I think if we don't charge the inventory tax, the tax foundation won't score us poorly on that. They give us no credit for giving the money back.
What is the point of giving?
That's what I've been trying to get up for a while.
I mean, I hate to simplify it.
And the tax foundation scores for charging tax. We're one of only 10 or 12 states left doing it. Nobody charges 100% like we do. And they give us zero credit for giving it back. And I asked them, I said, why won't you give us credit for giving the money back to the businesses? They said, we don't award bad tax policy. They consider this a Band-Aid on bad tax policy, and they are not going to do it till we eliminate the tax. So how we give local the Assessors Association and their general counsel and their president. I'm actually going to be making a presentation to them on the 23rd of this month at their annual meeting in Lake Charles.
Wendy, we may have to unmute you if you were.
No, that's okay. We're not messing with Bob.
Hello?
ITEP in exchange for eliminating or phasing out the inventory tax. That's what's on the table. There seems to be a lot of interest, particularly in those parishes that are receiving a lot of money from the ITEP. Questions?
Yes. Please explain the Constitution votes, or what Constitution votes will be required in order to implement these changes.
Same thing with the FIT deduction for corporations. That would be on the ballot this October. The inventory tax change or phase out would also have to be a constitutional amendment. We're not sure if we're going to get that on with local governments to make them comfortable. That would probably be voted on in a constitutional amendment in 22.
Okay.
But we're working. Look, all this is up in flux, and the process is the process. It can get amended. It can get changed. So right now we just have a raw bill and an idea of which direction we want to go. The process will actually get a direction to make everybody feel comfortable. All constitutional amendments take to both houses to pass and actually get on the ballot. Then a majority vote of the people to implement them.
All right. And JJ Buque is asking, have you heard where the governor stands on these initiatives?
So on the lowering of the personal and the corporate income taxes, I think he's going to be supportive. At least I don't believe he'll fight us. I think he's taken a wait and see attitude on the inventory tax. See what kind of buy-in we can get from local government. So, and severance, I think he would look at anything that we would have a good idea on. So far, I don't think he has we don't have an idea what direction we need to go yet. So.
Excuse me. Can you also discuss the effort to improve the sales tax collection process? I don't know that that's been ironed out.
That's what they're working on. This central board would be in charge of that, but I think it would become more centralized. Like I know all the entities. That's Speaker of the House, Clay Shake's on it. That's really his baby. So I don't want to speak and get something wrong.
All right, and apparently we were having some audio issues. Someone is asking if we can touch upon the inventory tax again. Just to go over that, we were talking about possibly eliminating the inventory tax since the state repays the businesses for that amount collected. Right now, only 8 states are participating in an inventory tax. Is there anything more that you wanted to add to that for
Well,
those
I
that
mean,
missed it?
you pointed it out. The locals collect it, the business pays it, and then the state gives the money back.
Right.
The exchange could be greatly simplified if the state and the locals could work out some mechanism to make sure they're monetarily left whole and leave the businesses out of it and give them relieve them of the burden of having to deal with that. I mean, it's a huge amount of paperwork. They have to pay tax, and there is a huge lag time. I'm sure. I know the car dealerships. I know the beer distributors. I know a lot of people would be very happy if they didn't have to deal with inventory. My main emphasis is just we're scored so poorly on it,
Right.
and it's just something that I think we could fix. We should fix, and that's what we'll attempt to do this session.
Very good. Well, again, Senator, thank you so much for coming in to discuss this. I know you will be in Baton Rouge later this week
On the 18th for the tax seminar.
Tax seminar for
At La Vie.
Louisiana. Yes, exactly. I'll be there as well, learning more about this. I've learned more here today than I have in any economics class, so I appreciate the insight. Again, for those of you who have tuned in, I appreciate you doing that. And we will be sending out our newest SCIA magazine with an article about this and Senator Allain's tax proposals. So again, I remind you about the crawfish boil coming up, and be on the lookout for our next SCIA luncheon coming up on April 20th. Thank you so much, and please have a great day. Thanks so much for tuning in.